seminar. And for the first time in the framework of our academic programs, Professor Dr. Goran Vasin from Novi Sad and now from Vienna. He is going to speak about, for us, a very fascinating and very important topic of the Serbs of the Habsburg monarchy in the long 19th century. And we are pleased to open him the floor and are expecting what was the date of 1878, which he marked in his abstract, and what was the long and difficult path of Serbs to the state of the, they came to on the eve of the First World War. Thank you and you're welcome.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, уважаемые коллеги, я сказал, что я не говорю так хорошо по-русски, но спасибо вам за приглашение и за возможность обратиться к вам сегодня. Я думаю, что в следующем году или в 2022 году, когда пандемия закончится, я буду приехать в Москву и тогда учить русский язык. Topic of my research, I'm here in Vienna on postdoctoral research. This is Richard Georg Plaška grant, and the topic of my research is Serbian elite in Habsburg monarchy in long 19th century. Result is going to be, I hope, the book in 2 volumes about Serbian elite and the Serb question, so to say, in Habsburg monarchy in the 19th century. We have written about those topics in our 2-volume book, History of Serbs in Habsburg monarchy, 1526-1918. But this is part of my project and research here. So I hope that I am going to give some answers on your question, and this topic and this my story for this day is also some kind of review of my research. I'm here for some 7 or 8 months. So for duration of the 19th century, Serbs in the Habsburg monarchy gravitated towards Vienna on the one side and Karlovci on the other side, on the periphery of Habsburg Empire. Subsequently, their national identity was formed around those centers of gravitation. Ever since the Great Migration, Velika Selba on Serbian in 1690, Serbs had been ideologically as well, also identity-wise, tied to Habsburg dynasty, personified in the emperor, and this will remain a constant factor until the beginning of the First World War, with some dark periods. During all these decades and centuries, Vienna remained, so to say, the focal point in the collective consciousness of Serbian people, a place of magnetism that attracts Serbian intellectual, spiritual, political, and church elite in those periods, especially in 18th century. This period, especially since the end of 18th century onwards, testified to the birth of a new elite that sought, so to say, counsel and connections, as well the culture and science in Vienna. The relations between Serbs who lived at the periphery of the monarchy, in the military border, southern Hungary, so on, and its very center developed rapidly and resulted in the rise of a new and stronger elite, and that was ready and willing to integrate with the system of the state and considered its domicile state in the parts, and it is going to be another story in the Kingdom of Serbia. Even before the times of Vuk Karadžić and the first Serbian newspapers, Serbs in the monarchy started building their identity in the correlation with the capital of empire through church connections and through church, Serbian Orthodox Church. The fact that the first newspapers in Serbian were published in 1790, 1792 in Vienna, that is during the Turkish war, war between Austria and Russia and the other one side against Turkey, that was a clear sign that Serbs were beginning to find their place in the multinational Habsburg monarchy. And that was also the beginning of the French Revolutionary Wars. The military border had a large part in this significant process. At the onset of the war with revolutionary France, the border delivered some 35,000 soldiers. When I say the border, I believe Slavonian Croatian military border and Šajkaška battalion in today's Vojvodina. 35,000 soldiers, and while by 1815, by the end of those wars, their numbers grow at almost 100,000. Soldiers coming from the military border area fought wars everywhere from the Rhine to Italy. Thus, the border, which had already been in the great need of reform, took a proportionally large burden of warfare without any adequate substitute or replacement, and that was highly devastating process for military border and for Serbs in military border. It's going to be quite significant for the Revolutionary War of 1848-49. This resulted in its influence and importance for monarchy after 1815, I was saying. The church was particularly tied to Vienna in many intertwined ways. It is known that dignitaries such as Metropolitan Stefan Stratimirović, for example, and later on Patriarch Josif Rajačić and Patriarch German Anđelić invested a lot of effort into building the structure of Serbian church on the foundations made by experience and example of centralizations and reform in the period of Maria Theresa and Joseph II, which characterized the entire monarchy in that specific period. The Metropolitan of Karlovci was the only organization that unified all Serbs in the monarchy under its jurisdiction. So that was say the only institution for all Serbs in the whole Habsburg monarchy. As such, it is an important segment of the analysis of the impact of religious elites, Orthodox elites, in the Habsburg monarchy, and that their view on the Serbian church elite, but not only Serbian church elite, because the fact is that Metropolitan of Karlovci was canonically, and that is of high importance, in charge of all Orthodox Christians in Habsburg monarchy, which resulted turbulent relations with Viennese Greeks, with Greeks in Habsburg monarchy, and as well as the Romanians. During the first Serbian uprising, 1804-1813, Metropolitan Stratimirović served as a key connection between Serbia and between the court in Vienna. And he was establishing the foundation of their diplomatic ties, while at the same time famous Dositej Obradović set the basis of Serbian education and foreign office. Stratimirović was, I believe, very wise and moderate enough in his discreting support to Serbian uprising and toward the cooperation with the monarchy, those two ties, because he was very active in all major events until the 1807, because year before Austria lost significant battles against Napoleon, and particularly after 1809, after defeat of Wagram. Nevertheless, Stratimirović's determination in supporting the uprising in a continuous way did not falter, and it is worthy of note that he, Stratimirović, had been one of the first dignitaries to voice the creating of Slavo-Serbian Empire even before uprising 1804, and that was with the connection with Russian Empire. Also, he was not the only person in that who's thinking in that direction. We have Bishop of Bačka, Jovan Jovanović. We have Archimandrit of Monastery Piva, Arsenije Gagović, and also we have some plan from Metropolitan of Montenegro in Serbia, Petar I Petrović Njegoš, in Serbian St. Peter of Cetinje. He was also connected in those Slavo-Serbian Empire plans from the beginning of the 19th century. It is equally important to mention numerous examples of military officers who fought in the imperial army on many fronts during the 19th century all along, starting with the Revolutionary and Napoleonic Wars, during the Revolution, 48, then during the wars of Italian and German unification, as well, of course, in the Great War. Many of those biographies, conduits here, I have found many of them in the Kriegsarchiv, been preserved and published, but it is necessary to conduct one new detailed analysis and to conceive a correct notion of the position and the number of high-ranking officers of the Serbian ethnicity in the imperial army, as well, I believe, to compare those facts with participation of officers of German, Hungarian, Bohemian, Croatian, and other ethnicities. I have found many materials here. I have all them, all those Serbian generals and colonels and so on. They are through whole to 19th century. I have many of them, and that is quite interesting. It's going to be one of the parts of my book. Keeping in mind that the identity issue of loyalty to the House of Habsburg was one of the most important among the military corps and the Serbian community, we believe that this question is going to be the crucial in the getting a comprehensive overview of the Serbian community and its elites in the monarchy, extending to the very end of its existence of monarchy. Particularly during the Napoleonic Wars, we have new generation of generals was promoted that would in time play a significant role in the creation of Serbian elites. Among them, we must mention some of them, not all, of course, Petar Gvozdenović, Mihailo Mihaljević, Petar Duka. He was the head of the headquarters of Archduke Karl. Some generals, Davidović, Milutinović, Filip Vukasović, Mamula, Petar Radivojević, later on commander of military border. In fact, a special military caste was being created, and that caste would, during the second half of the 19th century, rely more intensely on the government structures and higher levels of military hierarchy than on its own Serbian people and Serbian elites in the southern parts of Hungary. It is in this context that we mention the examples of generals. Gavrilo Rodić, he was later on governor of Dalmatia, General Ivanović also, and of course Svetozar Borojević of Bojna, who earned prominence during the World War I. We know many stories about Svetozar Borojević, and I have found many new facts in Krigsarchiv about him. Officer corps represented some formal symbol of loyalty, but I believe that is not only the case in the Habsburg monarchy, but also in the Russia and the Ottoman Empire, because that strong identification of officers with a specific commanding structure or the court itself testifies that the process, mostly through personal correspondence, but it is quite interesting. I have found also some materials about, so to say, structures in the military army of Russia and Austria-Hungary, and this is high specific topic of loyalty to emperor, to army, and so on. When we have analysis of the scientific accomplishments, let's say law science, medicine, as well in art, music, church chanting, that was of high significance, dozens of prominent Serb intellectuals come to mind. All I said lawyers, poets, painters, all of whom were Viennese students, and who returned to their original environment in order to enlighten the people, spread knowledge, so on, and create and shape some kind of identity ties between Serbs and Habsburg that was specific in the first half of the 19th century. The importance of creating elites and establishing national specificities gained momentum among the Serbian community, which explains the extent to which Viennese students succeeded in creating the atmosphere of loyalty to the crown and the emperor. And this is really important. That's part of loyalty to crown and emperor, not Hungarian government. For decades to come, those tendencies based on the set ideal also shaped antagonism toward Hungarian national idea, especially after 1867. And that is one of the crucial points of my research. We have that loyalty feeling and the loyalty emotion to court and to emperor because of that Serbian privilege about 18th century and so on, but we don't have that kind of loyalty to Hungarian government, especially after 1867, Majorization, and that hard ethnic policy from Budapest toward the Serbs, Romanians, Slovaks, that was really strong. And so that we have loyalty to emperor as a Kaiser, but we don't have loyalty to emperor as a Hungarian king. That is quite significant. When I was talking about university, a university was the very place where future elites were created. Therefore, Vienna was an attractive place for Serbian students, albeit not to the extent that might have been expected. It is mostly for financial reasons. We have many of lists of those Serbian students in Vienna, but numbers are not too significant, not too high, especially after 1870s. But nevertheless, the leading figures of Serbian politics in the monarchy, famous Svetozar Miletić, Laza Kostić, Mihailo Poli Desenčić, they were all Viennese students, and many of them earning the title of PhDs in the University of Vienna. But that was the period before Ausgleich and before the Austro-Hungarian settlement. Also, we have many poets, painters, and the crucial influence of Karlovci chanting on the Serbian liturgics to these names. It can be said beyond doubt that the influence generated in Viennese intellectual circles became so strong and significant in the Serbian community, that is the middle of 19th century, that it is must be included in those that shape the identity of nation, identity of loyalty. This is particularly important keeping in mind because that antagonism between Kingdom of Serbia and the dual monarchy started in 1903, and that was one significant process that changed situation drastically. Among these circle of those notable individuals, we must mention by some various names. Poet Branko Radičević, then we have a poet and painter Đura Jakšić, Novak Radonjić, special Serbian artist Uroš Predić, Paja Jovanović, and historian Stanoje Stanojević, Vladimir Ćorović, and novelist Petar Kočić. Especially Vladimir Ćorović and Petar Kočić, they have studied in Vienna, but that was the period of before annexation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The work of Vuk Stefanović Karadžić and his contribution to creation of the modern Serbian language cannot be sufficiently emphasized, nor can it be disregarded that the years that he spent in Vienna were crucial in that context. The year is 1850. We have Bečki književni dogovor, Vienna Literary Agreement, is part of the mosaic that constitute the important literary and political picture that emerged in the decades to follow as part of the efforts of establish a Serbo-Croatian cooperation, but it is not going to be so well in future decades. This cultural milieu was very important in the terms of understanding and creating future elites and the cultural protagonists within the Serbian community. Vienna's capacity in that respect was immense after 1860s, especially in that period. City was completely remodeled, adorned with fabulous palaces, luxurious hotels, theater buildings, museums, shops, cafe shops, and so on, and all of which had one important thing in common: the proximity of the court as the very center of the political and military life of the Habsburg monarchy. I think that also one of the specific idea is to place adequate emphasis to the role and the impact of Vienna as the capital city, and that connection with Serbian elite on the periphery in the context of the integration, forming ties and creating an integrated multinational state that had to put some levels on the national turbulences again after settlement. The idea is also to present the Serbian public, I don't know, some kind of new prospect on those integrations, on cultural ties, and that identity connections between nations during the reign of Emperor Franz Joseph, all of which became clearer and better understood the heritage of monarchy that remained after 1980. Especially, there are some negative examples of this tendency, easily perceived in tensions between Belgrade and Zagreb, in the context of intricate ties with Serbs that lived in what used to be territory of Habsburg monarchy. Major breakthrough the monarchy experienced at the turn of the century in all domains of social, cultural, and intellectual life, reflected on the most prominent Serbian intellectuals of the state, who in turn equally contributed to integration process into dual monarchy. This integration clearly encompassed all segments of Serbian community in the monarchy, and the given examples from the history of military, church, and political life of the state show that Serbs existed as an integral component of the monarchy. Even their loyalty was divided between the emperor and after the 1903, the king Petar Karađorđević. Dynastic change in Serbia was a key moment for the Serbs in the monarchy at the turn of the century. They became more and more receptive to impulses coming from Serbia, while being increasingly pressured by the monarchy and its policies directed to crush Serbia and through wars, Carinski Rat, annexation crisis, creation of Albania, resulting of frequent arrests, persecutions, the Velizenički process 1908-1909, and that was the culmination of the physical violence against own population in 1914-1915. I have also some remarks about that position of image of Russia between Serbs in the Habsburg monarchy, and that was quite significant. From 1860s, we have most prominent leader of Serbs in the Habsburg monarchy, that was Svetozar Miletić. He wrote many texts about Russia and about Habsburg monarchy and later on Austria-Hungary. Because he was so influential on the Serbian population in Habsburg monarchy, but in Serbia also. He was arrested in 1876 and he was in jail for some 2 years and so on, and that was the symbolic end of his political thought. And later on he was active until 1882. But in that specific period, when he was with his highest level, he wrote many texts about position of Russia, position of Austria-Hungary, especially in those situations and political turmoils after Crimea War. He was not too kind to idea of Tsarism, but he was really he was adoring Russia itself, and it is really interesting because he was expecting that Serbs need to have strong position in Russian public opinion, but he was against Tsarism. He was some kind of left liberal. Also, we have example of Mihailo Pulidesnačić. He was the right-wing liberal, and he also, in his newspaper Branik, wrote hundreds of articles about Russian foreign policy and about Serbs in Habsburg monarchy. Polit was always talking to Hungarian government, especially after 1876, when Hungarian government and Hungarians were against Serbia and Russia in that Eastern crisis. And he was talking that one day Hungarians should expect that the Cossacks will just go between those Carpats and the place, and they are going to be in Budapest in few hours. That was in many texts, and he was hope, of course, not towards the war, but he was expected some help from Russian foreign policy. And he wrote many articles about Russian Orthodox Church because Metropolitan of Karlovci didn't have so much connections with Russian Orthodox Church after Ausgleich, and he was writing various texts about Pobedonoscev, about Emperor Alexander III, about Japanese War 1904-1905, when the Hungarian public opinion was against Russia. Polit was for Russia, and that is going to be one part of my book, one big chapter. I'm going to call that chapter between Tsar and between Kaiser, because public opinion and political elite was also split into two two directions. What to expect from Austria-Hungary? Okay, we are living in Habsburg monarchy, but we have sympathies for Russia and of course for Serbia. After 1879, that was the turmoil point after occupation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Miletić wrote some of his various texts in Zastava against occupation, against that Austro-Hungarian politics that is going to divide Serbs on Balkan Peninsula in Serbia and Montenegro and Herzegovina and so on. He was harsh on arguments against Hungarian policy, against Austro-Hungarian foreign policy. And we have some specific public opinion in that direction to the end of Habsburg monarchy, that the foreign policy of Habsburg monarchy is bad for Serbian question, it is bad for Serbs, and we have that opinion. Miletić wrote that the annexation, that occupation of Bosnia and Herzegovina and Berlin Treaty is the full national capacity of Serbs. And in that specific topic, we have many books written on Serbian language, but the first and the originally Miletić wrote that a few days after Congress of Berlin. So that is quite problematic situation in that political sense. In church sense also, it is policy of foreign policy of Austria-Hungary that was related with Serbian church question. I'm going to send also one paper for Isledovania, and that paper is Austria-Hungary and Serbian church question, because we have Metropolitan of Karlovci, and from 1870 Dalmatia was just turned from that Metropolitan of Karlovci, and with one small part of in Bukovina that was created one especially new Metropolitan eparchy with Dalmatinsko-Bukovinska eparchia. Also, we have influence in the church question in Serbia after Berlin Treaty, when the Metropolitan Mihailo, he was pushed from the throne on the ideas of King Milan Obrenović, but there was some canonical issues, and King Milan wrote letters to Emperor Francis Joseph here in Vienna to solve that problem with Patriarch German Anđelić in Sremski Karlovci. And I have many documents on that topic, because in that canonical issue, Patriarch German Anđelić and Serbian bishops from Austria-Hungary have their duty to organize church to Hirotonia of new bishops in Serbia, and that was quite big problem. But at the end, Emperor Francis Joseph wrote one letter to Patriarch German Anđelić in the March of 1883, and that situation was resolved. Also, situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina, where authorities also removed Metropolitan Sava Kusanović, and that was also one part of that church elite question. Okay, we are going to have some new relations after Berlin Treaty, and also we have the last patriarch of Metropolitan of Karlovci, Lukian Bogdanović. He was unfortunately was tragic death, 1913, and they didn't want to elect a new patriarch in the situation in the before First World War. We have wrote many studies, many texts about Serbs in Habsburg monarchy in the First World War, and that was the painful subject, because that was truly terrific and horrifying situation for Serbs in Habsburg monarchy, especially in Srem. We have that situation because there was many atrocities against Serbs, Serbs who lived in the Habsburg monarchy, also atrocities against Serbs in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and that was one really hard period of history of Serb history in Habsburg monarchy. Also, Serbs as soldiers, main part of them were sent to Galician front, and we have some 20,000 Serbian soldiers that put their arms off and have gone to Russian army. So that was highly, so to say, problematic situation for Serbs in monarchy. And the very end of the monarchy, we have that political issue between Zagreb and Belgrade, who is going to unite the new kingdom and so on. There was many problems in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but we know that after the winning of the First World War, Serbia was in better position. But also, I believe that that part of confrontation started from 1878, and that resulted with all these situation in Sarajevo, for Vidovdan, and also in the First World War. So I have planned to present this research of the form of monograph with the final goal of a two-volume book on the intellectual influence of the Habsburg monarchy, but also exerted on the Serbs living in the monarchy, as well as on those living in the Kingdom of Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, and so on. This would, I hope, shed light on a wider parallel with the other nations living in the monarchy, showing in the cultural, enlightenment, and spiritual influences acted as a factor of integration and also disintegration of the multinational state of Habsburg. And I think that, I don't know, I'm going to give my best, and I hope that in this period of next year, I'm going to have some part of that manuscript over. I believe it is going to be some 700 pages. I believe I have now I have 200 already. So I hope that when I return to Serbia, to my home, I'm going to write 1 year, and I hope that I will send you some of those papers or books, I think, and I hope that it is going to be of some interest to you. I'm open to all of your questions. I didn't want to read anymore. I have plenty of text of English, but I think that we can talk about those ideas. This is only part of my research. And for Isledovanje, I will send you a paper in next days about Austria-Hungary and the Serb Church question, 1868, 1883. That is also part of my research here in Vienna, but also in Sremski Karlovci, Belgrade, and so on.
Thank you very much for your very inspiring presentation. And I suggest to colleagues who have questions either to raise your hand physically or to write in the chat or to make any other mark of your intention to ask our speaker something. So please, Мила, пожалуйста, только включите микрофон.
Professor, thank you very much for your presentation. I have a question about radicals. What are radicals the part of a political elite? Or they weren't perceived as the leaders of the national movement because of their humble origins?
Thank you for your question. Concerning Radical Party, that was a two-sided story, if I may so. They have been strong in the southern part of Hungary, that is a little bit poorer part of Hungary, and they have those specific anti-clerical and social ideas, and they have also connection with Hungarian parties, also left one, Tisza party and Kossuth party, I beg your pardon. So they are part of elite, but they are really too radical against church. Their anti-clericalism was at that high level that when I read those texts, I didn't believe me with my own eyes. We have today some kind of, I don't know, yellow pages, some bad newspapers and so on. They're writing something like some kind of scandals about church. But Radical Party and Zastava were quite stronger than that. They have written in many decades about Patriarch German Angelic, Patriarch Georgi Brankovic and Lukian Bogdanovic so bad that that was unbelievable. For the Patriarch Georgi Brankovic, they have written one text that was in 1895, and the title was Patriarch Satan, and that was really unbelievable. But they have, radicals have best connections with left Hungarian parties, also with radical party in Serbia, especially against Obrenović, and also with good connection with Nikola Pašić and Petar Karađorđević. So after 1903, radical party was highly connected with Kingdom of Serbia, with Belgrade government. And the idea from Belgrade was, okay, we have now problems with Austria-Hungary, with their foreign policy, and we need to connect some part of political, I don't know, that political character of Austria-Hungary. And they have ideas, okay, we have radicals here, we are going to connect with left parties in Hungary, because those parties have some thoughts about independent Hungary. We are going to, okay, we need to have some defense against foreign policy of Austria-Hungary against Serbia, and that is the one of the reasons why we have Serbo-Croatian coalition and the connection of radicals with left Hungarian parties. But in inner policy, they were a significant party in the periphery of Austria-Hungary, but they don't have that kind of influence on the Hungarian parliament in Budapest. There we have church bishops, and they are okay. They are elite of the Austria-Hungary. They have many connections with government, with other bishops, so on. But radicals don't. But those political part with Serbia, radicals were very significant, and they have the leading role in the unification of 1980. That was their crucial role. Jaša Tomić and his party was the crucial for unification 1918. For that, so to Serb line against ideas from Zagreb that new state need to have two centers, Zagreb and Belgrade. Radicals pushed away that Zagreb line and said, okay, Belgrade is now the capital. We need to unite with Serbia, not with Zagreb, but Serbia. And that was really crucial until this very day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
More questions? Анастасия, звук включаем. Да, спасибо.
First of all, thank you for a fascinating speech. And I was thinking about how you talked about the loyalty to the throne and Vienna that declined increasingly through the long 19th century. So is there any estimation if that process was connected with emigration to the Kingdom of Serbia, or the loyalty just declined inside the Habsburg Empire and they wanted to find new ways of living inside the Habsburg Empire?
Thank you so much on this question. We don't have that so to say strong immigration to Kingdom of Serbia. That is, we have some immigration, but it is not crucial. We have immigration after Revolution 48-49. That was the key immigration. Some 10 to 15,000 people went to live to Serbia because of that situations 48-49. But after that, we don't have so much immigration in Serbia. But I think that your idea is quite strong and good. And yes, the loyalty for emperor was declining in all over the Habsburg monarchy, between Czechs, between Slovaks, between Italians, Hungarians, turning down through ages. And there are many reasons, national policy, economic policy, catastrophic wars in Italy and Germany, many mistakes in foreign policy, in Great Eastern Crisis, in Crimea War in the first place. That was many mistakes and then one part by one part that declined. We have loyalty to Emperor 84-88 in various percents in whole monarchy. Okay, we have movements in Italy and Germany and Hungary and so on, but the loyalty was in the highest level. But in the next decades, especially after wars in Italy and Germany, that loyalty failed. In Serb, absolutely after, between Serbs, absolutely after the occupation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and of course after annexation and so on, it was quite obvious, but also after the Majski Prevrat, after the change, the dynasty question in Serbia, because Obrenović dynasty was in strong connections with Austria-Hungary, and they have put some pressure on Serbs in Habsburg monarchy not to overreact against state. That was also a crucial part. But after, when the Peter Karađorđević became a king and Pašić and radicals, that was turning point, and everything was going higher to Serbia and decline loyalty to emperor and the Habsburg monarchy in general. And that was so obvious after annexation, after Balkan wars, and of course at the beginning of the First World War.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
More questions? Лидия, пожалуйста, звук.
Thank you very much for your great presentation, and I wish you good luck with your books, with your monograph, and we're already expecting your books, your work. And I have a question on maybe on a wider frame. Did the formation of the Serbian identity have a specific way in the Habsburg monarchy, or was it similar to processes in other parts of the empire? For instance, in the areas where the Poles or Croats lived. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. This was the topic to so to say to think about. It was quite significant because we have a loyalty on the different levels in the monarchy, especially after revolution. We have loyalty among Serbs, but I said that was because we have that loyalty to emperor and to Habsburg throne, and that is of great significance because from the Great Migration we have privilege, we have some kind of unification of Serbian society, church connection with throne, with emperor, and that was some kind of memory and memory identity to emperor and to throne. But that was not situation with Hungarian government. That was not situation between some kind of local administration, and that was really specific. And in that identity question, the church was also influenced, highly influenced from Vienna, and churches remain loyal to emperor in the various situations. But when we think about Poles or Czechs or Croats were much more loyal to emperor. That is, I believe, I will write those theses on my book because of significant influence of Roman Catholic Church after 1855, 1871, 1872. We have clerical, I don't know, maybe this is not a clericalization of Croat politics in Habsburg monarchy. Stranka prava, pravaši, they were extreme right wing, and they were with high influence of Catholic Church, and I think that they were very, very loyal to emperor, but not just to emperor, especially to Franz Ferdinand. That was of huge significance. He have many various so to say councillors from Croatia. One of the far extreme right-wing Croatian politics, Frank was one of the best councillors of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. That those connections were very, very strong. And after Sarajevo assassination, I have written many articles from the Croat newspapers from Croatia and from Herzegovina, and that was so hard against Serbs. Okay, you killed our only hope for future. You are bloody Balkanists, terrorists, murderers. So that was that atmosphere reminded me on the 1941 and unfortunately 1991. That was one process of long duration between Serb and Croat policy. Also, when we have Poles, we have that. I think that their loyalty to emperor was, if I may so think, more anti-Russian than loyalty to emperor. I think that they have some political thoughts. Okay, we want to establish Poland or have some connections with Austria-Hungary, but that was practical reasons, I think. And Vienna and Budapest also, I believe, what is the best word? I think that they also have some political ideas, but after Crimean War, after Polish uprising, after 78, there was anti-Russian, they pushed anti-Russian feelings between Poles, and that was that connection between Poles and emperor. But of course, among Catholic Poles, among, I don't know, peasants and so on, the loyalty was far much bigger in the Galicia and so on. I think that is also interesting, and thank you for questions. I have written all questions because I think that it is going to be of great significance for my book. I need to really talk about those topics. The long 19th century is really complicated and so much confusing, and I have many things to learn, and I'm really grateful for your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. More questions? Chat is empty so far. No hands, but Mila, please.
I have a question. What place in Serbian national programs had the privileges, Habsburg privileges, after Ausgleich?
Thank you. This is also one big question. Thank you for this question, because Serbian privileges were the key point of every idea for Serbian political and church elite in Habsburg monarchy. Always. This is always key question and the key point, because the privileges were so important for at the end of the 17th and the beginning of the 18th century. It is the legal status of Serbian people. In the second part, we have declaratoria, regulament, and so on, but it was far better for Serbs than the law of church national autonomy, 1868. And yes, liberals, radicals, also politicians from Croatia, they always insisted that Hungarian government should to appreciate those Serbian privileges, that Serbian privilege is some kind of ideal status, if I may so say, for Serbian people, and that Serbian privileges were like Serbian Vojvodina. Serbian Vojvodina and Serbian privileges are the two most significant part of Serbian policy in Habsburg monarchy. So they insisted always. Situations was on the field was different from 1867, 1868, quite different, but they always insisted when the polity is on the Hungarian assembly in Budapest, is always first or the second sentence is, we need to talk about Serbian privileges. When every liberal and radical politician, first or second sentence is Serbian Vojvodina and Serbian privileges. So that question was in the form of identity, in the form of everyday life. That was the crucial for Serbian political elite in Habsburg monarchy. Absolutely crucial. Like the question of Serbian Vojvodina, that was the two most significant questions for all.
Thank you very much.
Further questions? Oh, Евгений, пожалуйста.
Hello, friends. Thank you, Goran, for your presentation. I hope we will see your book soon. I have a questions how Serbian elites explain themselves the existence of principality, Serbian principality of Serbia, and how they explain their loyalty to the Habsburg Empire in this case.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, which way they use for this explanation?
Serbian principality of Serbia, or Serbian Voivodeschaft and Temesvar Banat? You mean principality?
I mean Serbian in Habsburg Empire.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you for your question. Thank you for this is also one of those crucial questions. We have to understand that in second part of the 19th century, we have those two or three similar processes in the Habsburg monarchy concerning Serbs. That was the centralization, and that was also that we always talk about that identity question and the loyalty question. And when the Serbian politicians talking about that questions, they always said, okay, we have long ago Turkish period. It was destroying for Serbs. We lost our country, we lost our state, we lost everything. Orthodoxy was destroyed. And after one great war, Turkish war, and the Treaty of Karlovci, we have received something from the state, from the emperor, so on, and we have built new churches, we have built new monuments, and we have built a new life that was quite significant with us, for us, because we have lived. We didn't have chance to live those Turkish atrocities against after war 1699 or Turkish Creek 1739, and that was quite a big opportunity for us to create new identity, new form of living in the other country, and that was one of the biggest issues also in Serbian politics. On the other hand, we have that strong connection with Serbia. First uprising was practically in the first phase was pushed from monarchy, from the Serbs of monarchy, Metropolitan Stratimirović, many bishops and so on. We have strong connections with Serbia. In the period of Metternich absolutism, situation was a little bit passive, cold passive, so to say. So I think that in political life was really on standby from both sides, but in the revolution 1848, this is also significant. Volunteers, soldier volunteers from Serbia just crossed Danube and Sava River and fight against Hungarians in one of the bloodiest wars in 1848. And that was also a significant part of that national question and national identity. We have strong support from the emperor, from our, so to say, Austrian troops, and from Serbia, but we have many atrocities against civilians from Hungarian Honved army. And that was also one of those points, and that was easy to Serbian politicians in Habsburg monarchy to say, okay, we have a fight war against Hungarians in the Rakoczy uprising at the beginning of 18th century. We have fight a war against Hungarians 1848, and that was a really bloody war. Many Serbian civilians were murdered, church ruined, and in that identity question, that was really easy to say, okay, emperor have pushed us against Hungarians, but also we have strong connection with Austrian army, with Jelačić and so on, and we have connections and we have only help from Serbia. And that was one of the reasons of that new ways against the Hungarian government and so to say, emperor. But as I told, after 75, 76, 78, every situation was fading down, and Serbia was slowly growing stronger and stronger. emperor was, monarchy was, so to say, in many problems with national and economic questions, and that was one of those new key points. But foreign policy of Austria-Hungary was pivotal in this situation. That was crucial. But for identity, yeah, that was about your question. That was very easy to have some loyalty to emperor, not to have loyalty against Hungarians, and to say, okay, we have emperor, we have Serbia, and that was the reason why we have success or live in 1848-49. That was really crucial.
Thank you.
Thank you, Goran.
Thank you once more for your question. Thanks.
Good evening to everybody, and thank you for your report, Goran. And I have some questions about self-identity of Slavonians. So if we can take, for example, Serbian Wikipedia, we can read that, for example, Ignaz Berlich, or, for example, Anton Relkovic, they are Serbian linguists. And if we can read in Croatian Wikipedia, so they are Croatians, and so Croats, and this there is a question about self-identity. For example, it isn't useful if they were Orthodox or Catholics, but their self-identity as Illyrians or Slavonians, and nowadays different historians from Croatia and Serbia write them in different nationalities. So what do you think about this problem? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Well, this is also one of those political intriguing questions in nowadays, so to say. But we have some specific local self-identities in Habsburg monarchy. Amongst them, that in first part of 19th century, academic Milorad Ekmečić has written that the Slavonia and Dalmatia have some self-identity that is not only Croatian identity, that is some kind of specific form of self-identity. Also, we have that situation of the upper Vojvodina, today's Bačka, with Bunjevci, Šokci, and so on. But Serbian politicians was talking with them like they are Serbs. Croatian politicians talk with them like they are Croatians. And where the connection with Catholic Church were strong, they, in various cases, they have Croatian political identity. That is situation in some part of Srem, some part of Slavonia, and some part of northern Bačka. It is also quite interesting that we have Albanians in Srem, or Illyria in Srem. Yes, after the war, 1739, we have those Albanian Catholic settlements called Clementi or Clemente. We have also here in Vienna find those records, and in those small villages, Nikinci, Platiću, Arak, and so on, and they remain Catholics, but they were never, in national sense, they didn't have so strong national sense. They were just Catholics. But after that strong action from Đakovo Josif Juraj Strossmayer, and Liberalna Stranka, they, from year to year, they became Croats. So that religious question was so significant. We have one Serbian term that was constructed from Professor Ekmečić. Religija je vododelnica naroda. Religion is that benchmark for all people. So in that situation between Šokci, Bunjevci, Iliri, and so on, with Catholic Church and with Croatian Liberal Party, they became Croats. And in some situations where the Serbian population was the far with numbers, they became Serbs. And we have third party, they some of them just rest Bunjevci and Šokci and so on. They are Catholics, but they are not Serbs, they are not Croats. But that question of self-identity was so strong. Also, we have that situation in some other parts in the monarchy with Sekeljs, with some part of Romanian people and so on. That small group, so to say, small national groups or religious groups in Habsburg monarchy. So thank you for your question. That is, yes, that was quite interesting story.
Thank you. More? Maybe then I occupy the right of asking questions.
Thanks.
And first, I join my colleagues who wish you good luck and good inspiration to write your 700 or even more pages. We expect the results. And if I understand right, methodologically and from the point of view of composition of your future book, you are going to analyze both the political culture in the sense of political programs, groupings, parties, clubs, whatever. And at the same time, you are going along the social history and maybe prosopography, because you mentioned military elites and maybe church elites. So my first question is then, could you just name the elites you are going to analyze? And you partly named it in the title of your paper today, but still, the elite you are going to analyze, and how far the prosopography of kinship, clientelism, etc., could be reconstructed, because I know how hard it is to work on this often micro-historic level, and the work is enormous and the result is sometimes very modest. So what are the results, and how successful you were in these reconstructions? It's my first question. My second question, I think in your book, you would definitely write about it, but it's really a fascination problem as such, for maybe an article or whatever, this ideal Austrian homeland of the Serbs of the Austrian monarchy, because many of the pictures in their heads, in their minds, didn't correspond to the reality. But still it was so strong that they, in some, if not public, but maybe in intellectual space, they constructed the monarchy which never existed. And I think it is probably a worthy topic to be analyzed. And if you are doing so in your work, I think an interesting period is the so-called neo-absolutism, the years after, because there was no Hungarian king crowned. And in a way, it was an ideal time span to address to the emperor only as an emperor, because of course Francis Joseph had to wait until his reconciliation with the Hungarian nation, and whether it was used by the Serbian politicians or intellectuals or whatever, the period when he had such bad relations with his beloved Hungarians. And my third question is about the factor of religion and how it changes in the so during the period you're looking at. Because I think if we take the long 19th century, the calendar late 18th century is the period when being schismatic is a very hard accusation, and it's the bar on the way to any career. And in my research, I came across the letters of Theodor Jankovic, who was saying, I am the first Illyrian subject of Your Majesty who learned cameral studies, but I am marked as schismatic by my Hungarian co-pupils. So during the 19th century, with the strong liberal line both in Vienna and past Budapest, these religious or confessional or interconfessional issues had to get milder. But to what an extent in respect to the Serbs, and maybe political rhetorics is also a part of your book. So could you reconstruct how this language of pointing at an alien was evolving during your period? Thank you very much. So just some lines on these reflections. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for these questions, and for really thank you so much for this opportunity to talk today with you, with all colleagues. I think that is really of great significance for me in personal. I'm here, I'm not in not in my home. The situation is really specific, and it is of high significance for me. Yes, first question, or first part of first question, I'm going to write about church, about army, and about politics at the first place. And yes, that the question of clientelism, of those family connections, about those maybe some parallel structures in state, that is one of those crucial questions. And the results are in some way quite brilliant, in some ways quite modest, depends on case. But those parallel structures have enormous significance for leadership in the Habsburg monarchy. So to say, we have a strong policy, strong state policy, but we have those clubs, parties, church prelates, bishops, so some informal state in state, and this is crucial. This is really crucial. I find some of those lines in archive with some generals, with those marriage connections. We have many of daughters and sons from army officers, lately became bishops, or some sisters from some bishop married to some general. There are many those connections in that cast, so casta, in this class, so to say, and I think that is of high significance. I'm going to do my best to resolve that question. Sometimes it's going to be a moderate because we don't have every letter or every paper in archive, but for some of them we have plenty of new facts, and I have found many of them, diaries, letters, and so on in Kriegsarchiv, especially for army, for military corps, so to say, and I have many of them. It is significant for Borojevic. I have found his first conduit letter. He was Orthodox Serb, and later on he became, I don't know, Croats are thinking that he is a Croat. I don't think that he was a Croat. I don't think that he was even Serb. He was a loyal army officer to his emperor. And that is, I believe that is 95%, because I have read so many letters in his doc. We have hundreds of those boxes with his letters. And yes, he received letters from Croatia. Oh, you are our dearest son from Croatia, and so on. But I think that he was also sending some material help to Serbian church in his village. We have also those letters. But I think that he was especially excellent, loyal officer of his emperor, not Serb, not Croat. That was we should understand that was that period, and that was his idea, and we should write about that. And he was not the only one. We have also one of the Serb, Emil Vojnović from Belobreška. He was in the head of the state archive, and many others. That's one part of story. So church, army, politics, and those in between intercorrelations that is of crucial for book. Yes, second one, ideal Austria land. Yes, that was created after the decline of the Habsburg monarchy, and I think that that is one of those Stefan Zweig's world from yesterday. I think that idea was present between Serbian politicians in the Kingdom of Yugoslavia, and again in Tito's Yugoslavia. Some old politicians have those ideas. We have one secure, economically quite good state. Everything was fine. We have good old emperor, and we have all some kind of form of safe life. And I know that's Zweig's story. It is quite interesting. I have read that book, World from Yesterday, many times. I have also read that book from Baron Miklos Banfi, in 3 volumes. Also, in that forms, I can understand them because they have some good life in Vienna or Budapest or Transylvania and so on, and they regret about that life. And that picture in the situation of international crisis between wars was significant because, okay, we have problems with Hitler, we have quite new war, we have everything is breaking apart, and when we remember we have one good old state, but that situation in that good old state was not that good. The national tensions were strong, and the economic situation was hard, but okay, that was law and order, and we know about that. But I think that picture is now real strong among younger historians in Europe, USA, and so on, that Austria-Hungary was, I don't know, some form of EU or some form of not national, supranational state, and everything was good. Okay, we know that law situation or economics were good, bad, but political turbulences and the national tensions were so bad. And that was the result of 1918. I think that we know that. But yes, there are some idealism, but that was idealism from later period about ideal homeland, about Austria as a homeland. So yes, but I think that was that. I always call that Zweig's story, World from Yesterday. I think that was of great significance. And about religion, yes, I think that situation after Ausgleich, after settlement, was better for church. In the liberal politics is one part of story, church part of story is something else. From the 80s, 60s, those names, schismatics, and those ugly names were not present in everyday life, in the papers, in, I don't know, in the Pester Lloyd or Neue Freie Presse or so on. I think that situation was, yeah, you said mild. Yeah, that was a little bit, church was never in that kind of significant light like in 18th century. I think that was the crucial. Politics was so hard and so harsh, and foreign policy, but in church questions, Serbs didn't have, in inner autonomy, didn't have quite big problems. Everything was balanced. They have their funds, money, of course, monasteries, churches, and they have freedom to go to church for those big holidays, to have Orthodox ceremonies in Budapest, in the very center of state, here in Vienna, in Budapest, because the church question was not so important as a political question, and the church was, as an institution, in economic sense, in quite good position. But when we have situation about election of patriarch, and that was something else because that was in key connection with politics. That was other part of the story.
Thank you. Somebody else has? No? Just to be sure, no? Well, if we have no questions, it means that we have got sufficient answers. And we wish you once again very good luck and
Thank you.
safe time in Vienna. And we're looking forward for new forms of cooperation and see you again.
Thank you very much for support and for questions and for this chance to talk with you. And I really hope that this is the start of one really good cooperation. We have our journal in Novi Sad, Istraživanja, on the Scopus list. I think that we are quite open for your studies, for your texts, and I'm going to be, so to say, free when I travel to Russia. I'm going to send you email that I'm in Moscow, and I hope to see you. So thank you so much, and I hope that this is beginning of the one great cooperation. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
See you all again in already in January on our next seminar, which we would announce closer to the date of our next session. And let us wish you today Happy New Year and good Christmas. So Merry Christmas.
Yes, Merry Christmas.
До свидания, дорогие коллеги. Спасибо.
До свидания. Спасибо. До свидания.